Hey everyone, welcome back to the Claims Theory Podcast. I'm your host, Lindsay Gross, and today's conversation brings together numbers, leadership, and culture, which is not always an easy combination, but an important one. My guest today is Matthew Litzelfelner, someone I know very well and have had the privilege of working together for a long time. And Matt is the owner of A1 Towing and a seasoned financial leader with experience across healthcare services, professional services, and now entrepreneurship. Prior to owning A1 Towing, Matt served as CFO of Lexicon, a law firm with complex operations and financial structures. Before that, he was CFO of Nimble Solutions, a private equity-backed RCM company where he led finance through periods of growth, scale, and operational change. Matt is known for his collaborative financial management style, practical approach to numbers, and his ability to build strong culture while doing hard work. Matt, I am so glad to have you on the show.
Thank you, Lindsay. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm thrilled that we get to do it around the holiday season too, because there's no one better to bring out the holiday spirit in a company and get everyone excited about not only ending the year strong, but jumping into the new year with, the right alignment and goals, and you're the perfect person to have on. You have moved across industries and now into ownership, which gives you a very different lens on finance. So one thing I have always respected about you, Matt, is that you never looked at finance in isolation. You were always thinking about how decisions landed operationally, culturally, and financially at the same time. How have those experiences shaped the way you think about finance and leadership today? And then jumping into, let us know all about A1 Towing, because we all
Yeah.
want to hear about what you're doing.
So thank you for the intro. And, I have been throughout my career, I love from day one, even when I was back being an auditor, working with service industries, right? Providing a service, love working with people. And so that is where I've built my career, like you said, with Nimble and even Lexicon and now towing services, right? And I think where, a lot of people in my position from a finance leader, you think of a typical accountant, but really to be this CFO and a strategic person and build on the culture and everything and the leadership that you talked about, it's just very important to be very hand in hand with the leader of operations in that organization, understanding the ins and outs, because as a finance leader it's so much more than just numbers, right? And and yes, you need to understand the cash flow and what's going in and out and making sure that you're budgeting accordingly. But as we all know, businesses change very quickly, and understanding how operations is changing thing and what that financial impact may be is just so important. And I think if you do that, it also builds the culture and trust within your organization of, this is just not a finance guy. This is a person that cares about the organization. They know my job. They understand the impacts and the day to day of what I'm doing, which is just so important. I don't care what position you are in the company. I want to understand what you're doing, how you're doing it, because the people that are doing the day to day provide so much good details to us as leaders to say, hey, there's an issue here. How do we fix it? Right. And so just not removing yourself to be just a numbers person or just an operations person, and really saying, I need to learn everything about this business to be a productive member of this team is so important.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with what you said. And everything that you just said too is all about building trust with your people.
Mhm.
And without trust, you really don't have, and you probably won't get the answers that you seek, especially sitting in a role like, CFO and now owner of your own company.
Yeah, and I think it's important, especially being an owner now and getting into that, is the trust is so important, because there's so many people that want to hide the issues and the problems because they feel like they're going to get in trouble. Where in reality, as a leader, you want to hear the good, the bad, the ugly, right? And because
Absolutely.
that's the only way that we can help fix those issues. And now taking on this ownership role, coming into an industry that I had no clue about, right? Towing and auto repair. I've never even changed a battery in my car. So I mean, not knowing anything about anything, what I did as the owner of the company is I spent about 80 hours in the tow trucks with my employees, different ones. And It
Wow.
was for me to understand the job, understand their frustrations. What can I do with my professional career that I've learned to be able to come and bring into a business that's a little bit more blue collar in nature and not come in saying I have all the answers. Again, being a sponge and listening to them. And we've already been able to do things with technology and other things that have made their jobs easier at the end of the day. And so again, it is just imperative that no matter what level you come into any organization, whether you own your organization, whether you're a top professional, whether you're a manager, whatever it may be, understanding that business, learning from the people, figuring out where the heartache is and trying to fix it, right? And it comes through with action. You can listen all day long, but I told him, I go, look, I can't change everything day one. You can give it all to me
Yeah.
day one, but I can't fix it, right? But give me time and I promise you, you will see change. As long as they know that and you set that expectation with them, they're like, okay, he gets it. And I believe in him and I believe in the mission of this company, right? And I just think all of that's just so important.
Yeah, I again agree with everything you said. And working with you firsthand, I know that, when you say you're going to do something, you do it. And also just so approachable so that if there are concerns or issues, people do feel like they can go talk to you. Paying attention to the right numbers. Every organization says they are driven by data. But in reality, many teams are either drowning in reports, not necessarily the right ones, and sometimes they're focused on the wrong metrics. I see this constantly. I know you do too. Leaders think more data equals better decisions, but clarity usually comes from fewer, more meaningful numbers. So, from your perspective, what are the most important metrics leaders should be paying attention to on a regular basis?
Yeah, it's a good question. This seems probably overly simple, but cash is king.
Yeah.
And you have to understand when cash is going out and when it's coming in. And especially in the RCM business, right? It is a headache to understand the timing of when these bills are going to be paid, when your clients are going to pay you, all of that stuff. But if you can really understand the cash flow of the business and analyzing large vendor spends and trying to cut costs in certain way, again, I've mentioned that service industry my entire life. So the people are your inventory, as I always like to say, right? And the better the people that you have, the better your company will run. So payroll cost is always going to probably be your highest expense in any organization. But with that, finding other areas to say, all right, what does our AR look like, right? And how are we able to collect on that? And what is the timing and the expectation of being able to collect on that from any organization? And then also looking at those large vendor spends and saying, all right, how do we cut cost here? Because the last thing that you want to do, in my opinion, is cutting cost of people in a service industry. At the end of the day, you're going to lose your production, right? You're going to lose good. So I think there's other things to look at from a pure financial standpoint that makes huge impacts. And then to your point, every organization has KPIs. But when you start getting 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 KPIs, you can't manage them. And there's overlap and there's confusion, and someone thinks that this KPI is important. I'm a firm believer, 3 KPIs that run your business, and everyone needs to be looking at those every single day. How does this impact what I'm doing in this organization? How does that impact that KPI specifically? And how do I continue to improve that number, right? I've seen it where organizations just, there's a plethora of different reports and analysis that goes on with it. And okay, what does this KPI even mean? Right. Well, this person might think it means something else in this
Right.
person. So again, aligning the organization of saying, here's our top 3. This is what I care about. This is what's going to drive the business. Being able to do that and simplify the process, that's how you do it. And then there's always going to be multiple other things that, different reports that management is going to look at. But if you're kind of just making it easier and you're simplifying the process for the employees at the lowest level up to the executive level, and everyone's aligned with those KPIs, you will see better production and more profitability.
I agree. I think, the more complicated your operation or your business is, the more likely you are going to have errors and people are just not going to be able to follow along, certainly not at the growth speed you need them to. And so simplify it, I agree completely. So here we are at year end. Most organizations are definitely focused inward right now. Year end creates urgency, collections, expenses, closing strong becomes the obsession. What should leaders really be paying attention to at year end that often gets missed?
I think that's good. A lot of people will pay, annual bonuses or tax bills coming due. So the area where you can offset some of that cash flow almost immediately is what's sitting in AR, right? And the problem is people they look at AR, but they don't look at it every single day or every single week, right? So then it comes to the year end and you're like, oh my gosh, I've got $500,000, $1 million sitting in AR. How am I going to collect that? Well, think about it this way. These other businesses are probably tight on cash flow at year end too, because they're doing the exact same thing. So
Exactly.
it's the proactiveness throughout the year to say, I'm not going to let my AR balance be that big that I have to go collect that cash flow at year end to be able to pay certain things like bonuses or taxes, or even if you're an owner, guaranteed payments or distributions, right? At that point in time. So I think that that's the easiest thing to do is to try to stay on top of that much sooner than later and understanding what that looks like. Because at the end of the day, to your point, there's a lot of expenses that come through the end of the year that you're like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
how am I going to pay for this? The other piece of it is managing time off from people. In service industries,
Definitely.
yeah, and service industries, what they don't understand is if you have a ton of people that are taking the last week or two off because they want to have a Christmas and a New Year's, well, your volume drops, your production drops.
Yes.
And mine in December, you're like, okay, it's fine in December, but then in January, February, March, Q1 of next year, you're saying, what happened? Well, we had half of our staff take off, right? And so they weren't able to do the work. And so it's setting that expectation too, because you might have a good year in 2025. But going into 26, you might be starting at such a big loss that you have to play catch up the rest of the year because of all the production and volume that you lost at the end of the year. So it's having that fine line and that balance of saying, can we do? How do we sustain that to make sure that we don't see this massive drop coming in January and February?
No, that's right on. And again, spoken from someone with so much experience managing an operation, an organization through year end. Organizations become very reactive in the month of December. It's always about planning ahead. You're not planning in December for December. You should be planning for December well ahead of December, especially as it relates to staffing. And decisions, get made quickly and sometimes without thinking about what those decisions create in January and February. Pay attention to your staffing, pay attention to your volumes. All of those are going to be important factors going into your first quarter of the new year. And so, RCM, switching gears to RCM specifically, is one of the hardest areas to forecast accurately. You kind of mentioned some of these things before, but I've seen incredibly smart finance teams struggle here because revenue cycle performance is influenced by people, payers, technology, and policy changes all at once. From your experience in healthcare and specifically with an RCM company, what makes RCM so challenging when it comes to budgeting and forecasting?
I think, yeah, I hit on it a little bit, but to dive deeper, it is understanding the cash flow and the timing of when cash comes to the door. And the tighter that you can get on that, you can, if you have some CapEx that needs to be spent during the year and make some larger investments, when the cash flow is coming through the door, right? It's imperative to know how long it takes to normally collect days outstanding in AR, all of that when it comes to how long does it take the insurance payers to pay if we have denials, how long does that normally take if we have to appeal, all of that, how long does that normally take, what is the process, the amount of claims that we have that are going through with no issues, and then how many are being sent back to us to have to rework and do those types of things. I mean, it's really important to know the timing metrics beyond, through all of that. And then the other thing is forecasting volume is nearly impossible, right? Especially people having elective surgeries or whatever it may be. How do you know when people are going to need these surgeries, right? What is the timing? Is their deductible up and they're going to wait until the back half of the year because they're going to try to meet their insurance deductible in the first half of the year before they have to have a large out-of-pocket payment? It's understanding your business and what you've seen. And I love comparing year over year over year, month over month over month from the prior year to kind of just look at that and say, okay, best case scenario, here's what we can do. If we wanted to grow 5 or 10%, this is what we need to do. And this is how much more volume we need to do. And then I think when you're looking at volume, it's also the cash per case of what you're able to bring in for those cases as well. So you might be able to offset some of that volume depending if you're, doing a certain type of service that's going to pay you more, then you can offset that and you can manage that. But RCM is a beast in itself when it comes to trying to figure out when the cash is coming in, the volume, the cash per case, and with the moving laws of what the reimbursement rate is on all of these claims, it's tough to really get an understanding of what that is. When I budget, I think it's very important that you make a realistic budget for the next year. I think everyone wants to grow, right? Everyone wants to grow 10%, 15%, 20% every
Oh,
single
yeah.
year. And that's great. But I think that where a lot of people go wrong is they try to hold true to this budget they put in place at the end of the previous year, and the business looks completely different 3 months, 6 months, really day one after you make the budget, right? It's wrong.
Very.
It's so true. And so I think people, when you're running an organization, you're so stuck on, well, is it in budget? Is it out of budget? You have to go one step deeper. You have to say, what does the business need right now? And the budget that we put in place 9 months ago or 6 months ago is not where the business is today. And so I think people get hung up on there needs to be this massive budgeting process. And I do think it's important to understand where we've been and where we want to go. But when you're doing that, set the expectation to be like, okay, this is attainable. This is best case scenario. And try to find your balance there, because I think people will get burnt out if you feel like, okay, we're going to grow 20% every year and now we're at 5%. Well, no one's happy, right? So setting the expectation with everyone and saying, this is what you have to do. And so all of those numbers that we talked about, the volume and the cash flow and everything else, all of that comes into the budget process. But, growing double-digit percentage each year is very difficult to do. And so that's why, at least now being an owner, it's like, okay, where do we go? Where did we hit last month? Where did we hit the last couple of months? What's our run rate? Where do we think we can get to, and what do we need to do to get there? It's a slower process, but at the end of the day, it's a healthier way to grow, in my opinion. And people will not get burnt out as quick. And also sharing that with the organization of saying, this is what we want to do, and this is how we think to get there, and getting that input from them to say, let's all align, right? Because we can do this if we all work together.
Yeah, it's sustainable growth, which is the best kind. No, so that's so true, Matt. And I think we laugh, but what you said is true. As soon as you put the budget together and it goes into effect the next month, it's already out of date. Things
Yeah,
have changed.
next day.
The next day. Healthcare and RCM specifically is so nuanced. Every industry is, but it just really, to your point, it comes down to knowing your business and paying attention to historical numbers as well, so that you can try your best to anticipate what's ahead. So you have always treated finance as a partner, not just a reporting function. The strongest organizations I have worked with are ones where finance understands the business well enough to ask the uncomfortable but necessary questions. What does it truly mean for finance to be a strategic partner to the business?
Yeah, I mean, any finance professional knows, and probably even any business owner is finance is always a month behind or reactive, right? And so by the time these reports come out and you're closing December and you're halfway through January, you're already done, right? Now you've already lost another half of a month or a month because you're trying to wrap up year end or you're trying to wrap up that previous month. And it's very easy for a finance professional to get stuck in this cycle of month end close, year end close, and now you're just pushing out reports. So that's where, again, I'm harping on this proactiveness, but it's understanding where the business is at any point in time during the month. And so if you see some trends and you see volumes tanking, or you're seeing that people are taking off, or again, cash per case is not where it should be, those types of things, you have to get ahead of that, right? And you have to say, okay, I'm seeing this right now in the month of December. For us to be able to hit our goals for the month of December, we need X for the rest of them, right? And because if the finance person's not doing that, those are the ones that are looking at the numbers day in and day out. And if they're
Right.
not communicating that to the operations person or the CEO, whoever it may be, they don't know. And then they're a month removed and it's like, here's December. Well, what happened? And
Mm-hmm.
so it's just there's a cadence of making sure that you're looking at these numbers every single day, those three KPIs that I said, and making sure that you're trending in the right direction to avoid any of that, because it's just so easy to here's a report a month later, here's how it ended. Okay, well, we just lost another month. And 1 month is just imperative in any business that you can't lose, right? Especially if you're
Right.
trying to grow.
Yeah. No, Matt, how important is it for operations and finance to be in lockstep?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, me and you were very, very close when we worked together. Even when I went to the law firm, the COO there, I mean, we both have strengths and weaknesses, and I think partly because I have the finance brain and there's an operations brain, but it's how do you mirror those two, right? And I love spreadsheets. You might hate spreadsheets, right? But that's how we communicate. That's my love language. But but it's also saying, how am I going to put this in a form where I'm going to go present to Lindsay, or I'm going to present to an operations professional and say, all right, here's the numbers, but here's also the operational metrics that feed into that number that you can potentially impact. Because again, if I just came to you and said, here's some numbers, you'd be
Yeah.
like, okay. And then that would be the end of the conversation. Try again. But if I come to you and say, here's the numbers and this is why, and this is how it was impacted, I'm seeing a volume decrease, I'm seeing whatever it is, and these are the different accounts that's actually happening to, and in giving you that ammunition to go then to your staff and say, okay, Matt brought this to me, we need to jump on this, what's going on with this? It's so much more efficient, right? And so again, just making sure that if you're delivering financials and you're delivering information, there is a story, there's metrics behind those numbers that allow someone from an operationals team to say, I can fix that, or I need
Yeah.
to dive into that.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely right. Storytelling, probably at all levels, you have to tell a story or you probably aren't going to have people listening very well.
Yeah.
To what you're trying to say. So we talked a little bit about culture and leadership style, and anyone that knows you, Matt, knows that you are not the typical CFO. I mean that in the best way possible too. So finance teams often operate under intense pressure, and yet culture is sometimes treated like a luxury rather than a necessity. You have seen finance from the inside, the executive seat, and now as an owner. What is one lesson about numbers, leadership, and culture that every executive should understand?
Yeah, I mean, you know me, Lindsay. Culture is, I think, what makes or breaks an organization. And especially in any service organization, like I said, if the people are not happy and there's a high volume of turnover, what people understand, the cost to find a new person and get them onboarded is just too much sometimes, right? And so keeping the people, one, engaged and happy and meeting them in a place where they respect you and you respect them, is just so important, right? And so for me, culture feeds into the financials and it feeds into everything else, because if people want to come to work because they enjoy their job and they want to be there and they see the bigger picture and they understand that there's more potential money for them at the end of the day as the company continues to produce, the company's going to be more successful. It's the ones where the culture is broken and they're like, why am I going?
Right,
And so
right.
I have always taken the approach of no matter at what level I am, there's never an ego, right? And I come in and I meet them where they're at and we talk through whether it's life, whether it's work, whatever it may be. I mean, I have 54 people now at my new organization. I know about their wife, their kids, their personal issues, and I've done that at every job. You know that, right?
I do.
What that does is it creates comfort. When someone's unhappy with a position, they're going to come talk to you before you get that resignation letter. And then you say, how do we get through this? You're not going to fix them all and you're not going to win every single battle. But I always said that communication is so key in all of these areas. But if I can't fix I can't fix something if I don't know about it. Right. And so I'm ingraining in this culture of come to me, let's talk through it. But if you get to a bad spot, let's discuss what that is. If it's outside of work, if it is work, how do we fix that? And then it goes back to what I said earlier. If someone's bringing work issues, okay, what do we got to do to fix this? There's
Yep,
obviously an issue, right? Or
yep.
talk to other people in that same department saying, are you seeing the same issues? And so for me, I've learned a lot. We all fail. We all make the wrong decisions, but for me, I always learn from them. right? And so if I do something or I've done something in the past where I'm like, I don't think I handled that situation the right way, whatever it may be, this person felt a certain way after that conversation, you have to reflect as a leader. And I think as a leader, you have to be open enough to go into these conversations and say, what am I doing to fail you, right?
Hmm.
Because ultimately, as a leader, it's your responsibility on how these people are motivated. And so I've had thousands of conversations, and I normally always start and say, what can I do to help you? What do you need from me? And I think where it goes wrong is so many people come in and say, you're doing this wrong, blah, 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 whatever it may be. And they're not going to be receptive to that. Right.
Right.
And so now you're going to lose good people because of the approach. So that's where, for me, it's just meeting those people where they're at, having a conversation, being open to that conversation, sharing personal things about myself that make them feel more comfortable. And again, at the end of the day, keeping good people is just such a big success point for a business, because
100%.
if you have bad turnover, it's hard to sustain. It
Yeah.
really is.
Yeah, and I think, not taking yourself too seriously. I think, you do a great job of that. Look at, you're in an elf hat. You can't
I
be
learned
afraid to wear an elf hat or Santa glasses. Don't take yourself too seriously. Your people have to know that you are human. And I love what you just said about, sharing stories with them. We don't always get it right. We don't always make the right decisions, and maybe sharing past failures and lessons learned help give others, a chance to feel like, if they do make a mistake, that's okay. Your mistake alone does not define you. What defines you is what you do after that.
exactly.
But yeah, just not taking yourself too seriously, and you want to like who you work with, and you want to get up every day and really enjoy the people you work with, and what you're doing. And as an owner, as an executive, I think a big uh um responsibility to your people is to help and build that culture that people want to be a part of.
100%. So important. So important to success.
Yeah, well, Matt, thank you for joining me today. I appreciate your perspective and the way you approach finance and leadership. And to everyone listening, thank you for spending time with us. If this conversation resonated, please subscribe and share it with someone who would benefit. Happy Hanukkah, Merry Christmas, have an amazing new year. We've got some exciting things happening with claims theory, so stay tuned and we'll see you next time. Thanks so much, Matt.
Thank you, Lindsay.